Now in this video, I'd like to show you how MAM is integrated with Adobe Premiere. As I mentioned in other videos, we have the ability to go in and search for assets, look at assets, create projects, organize assets based on category, and so on. Now in this case here, for our demo, we're going to go ahead and use the project we've already created with the timeline that we've already created here as well, with the multiple clips. And now with this, we're going to go ahead and import this into Adobe Premiere. Inside Premiere, we have a MAM panel. Within the MAM panel, I can actually search for projects, for categories, and assets within the MAM system directly in the Adobe Premiere interface. With this, you see our project and our sequence and so on. And what we want to do now is go ahead and import that directly into Adobe Premiere. So I go ahead and select Import. It's telling me there is no project files because this is just strictly an MAM project. And with this, we're going to go ahead and import this project from MAM into Adobe Premiere and now bring this into our new Adobe Premiere project. With this, we have the assets that are associated with this sequence, and of course we have the sequence itself. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and make some edits to this sequence and then bring it back into MAM. Now, with all of these edits actually made on within the Adobe Premiere interface, we're going to actually now take this entire project here that we have with this sequence and bring it now back into MAM. But first, before I do that, I'm going to actually go in and make a change here to this, the name of my sequence. Now with that name changed on the sequence here, I'm going to now take this entire project with all of my edits and so on and then export back now to MAM. It's going to ask me to save this project, and as I save this project now, MAM is now asking, well, what metadata and so on do you want to add to this particular project? So we'll go ahead and type in the different information we'd like, along with categories, add this project to a category, maybe add a tag, also add specific metadata as well. So we can actually go in and look at the metadata and see what the metadata is here, and then go ahead and hit add. And now MAM is telling us that this particular asset is already in MAM, so we don't have to re-ingest it. So we'll go ahead and click OK. Now as we jump back over to MAM, we can actually now see our new Premiere project inside MAM, along with a new asset, Premiere to MAM sequence version 1. This is the actual sequence that we had created in Adobe Premiere and then exported back out to MAM. And then within MAM now, I have this particular project. This project now is actually a full project of Adobe Premiere with all its render files and so on. Now in this project also, I can keep track of the different versions. So here I have the different sequence that I created along with the project and the assets associated with this. Now let's say that we have to go back to Adobe Premiere and make some edits. So now back in Adobe Premiere, we can actually see the sequence that we have and go ahead and take a look at the different changes and so on that were made in version 1. Now if we go ahead and look at it and say, let's say that somebody had asked us to go ahead and add an asset that was in a particular category, and we wanted to add it to this project in Adobe Premiere. So we can actually go in, find that particular asset, let's say it's that video we had in off camera 3, and we can actually import individual assets into our project as well. So now we have this video Cam 3AA, and so now we're going to go ahead and use that within our sequence. So we can go ahead and just drop it in our sequence here, and then go ahead and take a look at the sequence here and make edits. Now with those edits made, we can actually go in now and take our sequence, and let's call this sequence version 2A and save that. And now what we're going to do is take this entire project here now and export it back out to MAM. with all of the changes as well as the new asset. Now we're going to go ahead and update the existing project, and with that we're going to add some notes and then go ahead and import that. Again, we can go in and add more details if you'd like on the metadata, but we're now bringing in this new sequence V2A. Again, it's going to ask and say that we have these assets already in EMAM, so we're not going to have to ingest them again. So now within Adobe Premiere, we can see through the EMAM panel that we've added this, the addition of that new asset as well as the new sequence here. So that's been added now to this project within EMAM. So if we jump over to EMAM, in EMAM now we can go ahead and see that there is now a new asset called sequence V2A. And now this is available for us now to send out for review and approve to our clients or to somebody internally. Now with this particular asset and this particular project, again, as I mentioned, this is complete now with all Premiere render files and so on. And we can again go in and do archiving as well as restore assets and so on. But in this case here, say if we were going to do archiving, we could archive the entire project for Adobe Premiere. With that also, again, on the project versions, you'll notice now that I have a new project version in Premiere adding that new sequence. So again, EMAM keeps track of that entire project. Now, let's say we go back to Adobe Premiere and now we add an asset that's locally on our drive. So we can actually go in now and select an asset. So as we find our asset, we're going to go ahead and just drag and drop right into our Adobe Premiere project. Now we may or may not use this in the sequence right now, but what I'd like to show you is how EMAM can actually ingest assets directly from an Adobe Premiere project, from a local project with local assets back into EMAM. So now what we have is the Lighthouse JPEG asset, and now what we're going to do is go back and export to Adobe Premiere and update that project that's already in EMAM. Again, we can go ahead and make notes as well as add metadata and so on, and we'll click add. And now it'll say that these assets are already associated with within EMAM, so we don't have to ingest them. But now what it's going to do is actually render out the sequence, but then also render out any other assets and create thumbnails for us for that JPEG file. Now within Adobe Premiere, we can see within the EMAM panel that we've exported that project from Premiere back into EMAM and added that Lighthouse JPEG. And you'll see that there's a thumbnail now created within EMAM. So if we jump back over to EMAM, we'll go ahead and take a look at the project there. Now once again within this project here, we can see this and open it up here and now see that there is now an asset, a Lighthouse JPEG asset that's been added now to within EMAM. So now we've collected that asset from the Adobe Premiere project and brought it now into an index within the EMAM system, and now able to do search and so on for this particular asset. So it's now part of the EMAM system. As well, we can actually go in then and look at the different project versions and now see that that Lighthouse has now been added to this version here. So once again, we've actually brought in assets into EMAM, taken those assets, brought them into Premiere, created a project, made some edits and effects and so on within Adobe Premiere, and then brought it back into EMAM, where we can then go ahead and store and archive all project files, such as render files and so on, associated with that project we brought in from Premiere. So complete management system of Adobe Premiere on all its assets within the EMAM system.